Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are staring down one of the most profound and, frankly, unsettling mysteries of human existence. Why exactly do we go to war? Is it just some cultural invention? Is it a biological curse we're stuck with? Or is it something else entirely? Now, our goal today isn't to just assume that war is an inevitable, uniquely human thing. Instead, we're going to look strictly at the research. We're going to investigate the truly ancient origins of conflict to see what the evidence actually tells us.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Have humans always been at war? You hear it all the time, right? People love to claim that warfare is just a natural, unavoidable part of the human condition, that as long as there have been people walking the earth, there has been war. But we really need to test that assumption against the actual archaeological and anthropological evidence. Because to truly answer this, we kind of have to completely rethink what we think we know about history, biology, and human nature itself.
But hold on a second. Before we get too deep into the mystery, we really need to nail down exactly what we mean when we say the word war. Because war isn't just any kind of violence. It is specifically organized, coordinated intergroup violence. We absolutely have to draw a hard line between, say, a random bar fight, a crime of passion, or individual self-defense, and actual organized warfare. Like, when we look back at the prehistoric record and find a skeleton with a fractured skull, sure, that tells us interpersonal violence existed, but it doesn't automatically mean those people waged war. War requires a level of coordination, planning, and political intent that goes far beyond just one person getting angry at another.
So to really understand human conflict, we first have to zoom way out and look at biology itself. Is conflict fundamental to life? Well, yes and no. It's like evolution balances a giant scale. On one side, absolutely, you have brutal competition. You've got predators, battles over resources, even the microscopic arms race of your own immune system fighting off a virus. But on the exact same scale, on the other side, you have profound cooperation. We're talking symbiosis, mutualism, complex social groups, and ecosystem interdependence. Life doesn't just compete to survive. It fundamentally relies on cooperation to persist. The biological scales are actually quite balanced.
Now, what's really fascinating here is what happens when we observe coordinated, lethal intergroup aggression happening in other species. Take ants, for example. They wage massive, highly coordinated territorial battles. Or chimpanzees, who conduct organized boundary patrols and literally raid neighboring groups. It raises a huge scientific question. Are these behaviors evidence of some shared evolutionary machinery, or are they just superficial similarities? Like, is it scientifically justified to call an ant colony's defense a war, or are we just projecting our own human baggage onto a bunch of insects?
Let's think about how basic survival needs might theoretically scale up into coordinated violence. It generally starts with simple competition for resources, right? Everybody needs to eat. This can then lead to territoriality, where groups claim and defend a specific area. From there, you get coalitionary aggression, which is just groups working together to defend or expand that territory. And finally, that escalation can culminate in full-blown organized warfare. But we have to ask ourselves, is this an overly simple evolutionary story, or is this really, step by step, how human warfare actually developed?
To figure that out, we need to look at the prehistoric timeline, because there's a crucial point here. Homo sapiens, us, emerged roughly 300,000 years ago. But for the vast majority of that time, our ancestors were highly mobile hunter-gatherers. And while the archaeological record definitely shows evidence of individual homicides back then, convincing evidence of mass organized warfare is incredibly rare early on. It's actually not until around 10,000 years ago, alongside early agriculture, fixed settlements, and stockpiled resources, that we start seeing a major shift. And by 5,000 years ago, with the rise of early states, boom, we see organized armies. War seems to scale directly with resources and political hierarchy.
Which brings us to what is probably one of my absolute favorite prehistoric mysteries, the overlap between us and the Neanderthals. For thousands of years, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals occupied overlapping territories, and a lot of people just assume that our ancestors simply wiped them out in some massive, dramatic prehistoric war. But we need to take a really impartial look at what the evidence actually tells us, versus what just makes for a good movie script.
Because the evidence we actually have points to a much more complex relationship. Was there resource competition and territorial displacement? Yeah, probably. But there is also overwhelming genetic and archaeological evidence for coexistence, cultural exchange, and deep interbreeding. I mean, think about it. Many of us literally carry Neanderthal DNA around with us today. We absolutely cannot just assume these two human species waged organized war on each other. Competing explanations like changing climates, shifting demographics, and just plain assimilation are equally, if not more, supported by the science. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the true human difference. Humans didn't invent aggression, but our cognition completely transformed it. Look at this wild paradox. The exact same human intelligence that allows millions of strangers to cooperate through ideology, nationalism, long-term planning, and advanced weapons technology is the literal exact same intelligence that enables diplomacy, international law, profound empathy, and deliberate peace-building. Our brains are capable of organizing mass destruction, for sure, but also incredible, large-scale cooperation.
Which leads us straight into this massive moral paradox. Humans understand pain, right? We can imagine another person suffering. We can anticipate death and grief. We even construct these incredibly complex moral systems just to distinguish acceptable from unacceptable behavior. So, how in the world can we deeply empathize with suffering, yet intentionally inflict it on such a massive scale through warfare? It's a heavy tension, one that philosophers, psychologists, and biologists have been wrestling with for centuries. Well, a huge piece of the puzzle lies in the psychology of moral reframing. You see, violence in war is almost never framed by its participants as doing evil. Actually, scratch that, it's never framed that way. Instead, killing is psychologically reframed as defense, justice, liberation, duty, or protecting your family and identity. Impartially speaking, this means that two completely opposing sides in a conflict can simultaneously and with complete sincerity believe that they are the good side, fighting a necessary fight to prevent a greater evil.
But we can't just look at what's going on in individual brains. We have to look at systems thinking. War is often an emergent system. Through mechanisms like arms races, security dilemmas, and tangled alliance systems, individually rational decisions can collectively trap populations into wars that neither side initially even wanted. Just imagine two nations building up weapons purely out of fear of the other. Well, that defensive action provokes the other to build more, creating this vicious feedback loop of escalation until the system itself practically pulls the trigger on the conflict.
And that introduces an incredibly deep question about free will. Do we really choose war? When a person follows their group into a conflict, how much of that is an actual free, conscious choice, and how much of it is just shaped by biology, childhood, propaganda, group identity, fear, and authority figures? If our behavior is so heavily influenced by all these powerful, overlapping forces acting on us, it really challenges how we understand human decision-making in the face of conflict. Are we just reacting?
Yet, despite all that, despite that overwhelming psychological pull of conformity, obedience to authority, and our deeply ingrained fear of being excluded from the tribe, we have the counter-evidence of human agency. If we are just responding predictably to biological or social forces, why do so many ordinary individuals bravely refuse to participate? History is absolutely full of conscientious objectors, civilians who risk everything to protect supposed enemies, soldiers who resist unlawful orders, and everyday populations that reject state propaganda. This power of refusal proves that conformity is definitely not our only setting.
Which brings us to what might just be our ultimate human agency, the capacity to question. Think about it. A virus doesn't contemplate whether it should infect you. An ant doesn't conduct a moral inquiry before it attacks another colony. But humans can. The ability to consciously reflect on our own beliefs and recognize our own susceptibility to tribalism might be the very mechanism through which conscious beings finally gain control over their inherited biological and cultural impulses.
Interrupting the cycle of violence requires asking really specific, critical questions. Questions like, why is this person actually my enemy? Who told me this? What evidence do I actually have? Is violence necessary, or is there another solution? Education, intergroup contact, and actively reflecting on these exact questions have been shown to significantly reduce a population's susceptibility to manipulation, fear-mongering, and dehumanization. Asking questions is literally a protective shield for your mind.
So, we started this explainer by asking why we war. We've seen that conflict is ancient, sure, but cooperation is just as fundamental to life. We've seen that systems and psychology can trap us, but that our uniquely human capacity to question can break those traps. So I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. If intelligence gave us the ability to wage war on a scale evolution had never seen before, could that exact same intelligence also give us the ability to outgrow it? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking those bold questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.